In this episode of the Texas Private School Podcast, Prestonwood looks to cause some chaos as they travel to Farmers Branch for leg three of the District 1 Grand Prix. Midland and All Saints square off in a battle of flash versus grit for the top spot in the district. Connor Evans and Covenant look to shock the world as they take on Dylan Stanley and the Chargers of Dallas Christian. Oakridge and Country Day square off in a preview of the SPC 3A title game, and Dixon, Collins, and Roden will look to establish their place at the top of the SPC over Shanks and Kinkaid in a massive SPC 4A contest. All this and more in the Week 9 preview of the Texas Private School Podcast. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Texas Private School Podcast. As always, I am one-third of your hosting crew, Wes Tolleson, joining you from beautiful Sunnyvale, Texas. Walker Lott and Ryan Schroeder call in from College Station and Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, respectively. Gentlemen, coming off the heels of a week where we probably should have canceled the entire program for some questionable things said by the so-called experts, we are back nevertheless in a week that somehow seems almost just as big, especially in the Southwest Preparatory Conference, where we could have a preview of not only one, but two distinct future title games. I'm very, very excited for all the contests, and that's not even mentioning Prestonwood versus Parish, All Saints versus Midland, Dallas Christian versus Covenant. Very, very, very fun things, as well as Lubbock Christian versus Colleyville Covenant. The more games I think of, the more excited I get. Walker Lott, another beautiful week in the world of Texas private school football. Number one, how are you, my friend? Number two, as always, your outlook on the great slate ahead.
Yeah, it's a great slate. This slate rivals last week. I think there's a lot of implications on district, on state, on playoffs, on championship appearances, like all the above, right? Is what you want. Rivalries. It's gonna be a great week. And yeah, I'm doing good. Life's good. Exam midterms. I'm still one last semester in college, so dealing with midterms for one last time and dealing with that. And the NBA is back, so Mavs play the Spurs tonight, which we're excited about. And Ryan had an all-time classic last night that he got to witness. So shout out to you, man. That from just watching it was a fun. So I couldn't imagine being there.
Absolutely, Ryan Schroeder. Kind of playing through your Jordan flu game at the moment. Maybe the insanity of last night just was too much for your nervous system to handle. All that being said, number one, how are you outside of the brief acute sickness? Outside of that, a lot of fun ball in Texas private school on the horizon.
Yeah, a lot of fun ball. We had some fun ball last night with Thunder opening night, but no, we got more fun. We got more fun games going on this week. I mean, there's absolute classics. We had classics last week. You could argue that these 2 weeks are, you know, are two of the best that we're going to have this year. So I'm super excited, and I'm super excited to kind of deep dive into some of these like basically district deciding games.
Definitely so. There are, again, as we get later into the season, the games always become even more vital. Now we're starting to see, hey, this is for vital playoff seeding. This is to avoid X team you don't want to play on this side of the bracket. And ultimately, this is where the money is made even before the playoffs begin. So we're about to dive into all of that, but a couple of disclaimers first. The first is apparently there is a bunch of ominous rain on the horizon, especially in North Texas. Therefore, it seems almost every game has been moved from Friday to Thursday. We all have conflicting priorities outside of this. We were recording this Wednesday night. This likely will be released around the time all those games start.
Yeah,
So
kickoff
basic,
probably.
yeah, basically, we'll have our picks out before then. You just won't have the context and our logic, but you'll have the motivation that we picked against you, as you can use for your respective teams. So go ahead and use that. After inevitably we get our picks wrong, go back and watch why we got them wrong. You can clown us there. It'll just be in a bit of reverse order, because all of you decided to be scared of the rain and play on Thursday. That
Hey,
being
Wes,
said,
Wes and I would have done that back in the day.
no, these kids did not play in the fall of 2018. That is what I will say.
Dude, we bring this up like maybe once every 5 weeks, dude.
Yep,
I mean,
it's a
gosh,
great
it's
memory.
fair though. It's so fair though.
So fun.
Again, the kids don't realize how much precipitation there was in the fall of 2018.
So
All these
much.
kids were, God, these kids I think were like in fifth grade then maybe, which scares me to think about. All that being said, yeah, we're gonna have a bit of reverse order with the rain delay. You will all be fine. That said, before we get into the actual games, we have some playoff bracket shakeup. Taps released a couple weeks ago that the brackets are changing. There's some implications here. Walker Lott has spent more time looking at this. I'm going to let you take this away now. We're going to discuss what exactly this means for divisions 1 through 4.
Yeah, of course, Taps releases this right during the middle of the season and not before the season because that makes too much sense, right?
Course.
But anyways, I won't spend too much time on it, but we can walk through it one by one. There's not much changes. Division 3 and Division 4 got the most change out of any of them, but Division 1 and 2 have a little couple extra things. Division 1, there's only one change. Division 1-3 plays El Paso Cathedral round one just officially, right? There was the type of thing where El Paso got added way late last year and kind of were like, why? Now they're making it from the beginning. Hey, they're at it. And so 1-3 plays them, which means if how things are going and how we can predict it, probably would be Prestonwood that would play them again round one as of just like the same time last year they played them round one.
I'm going to say one thing really quickly. Now, I'm verifying to make sure this is right. But again, I know this is a really basic question, but they're not a Division 1 team. They're Division 5 because they're freelance,
They're
correct?
they're a, they're the only, I think, and I could get this wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're like a Division 1 freelance school.
But doesn't that mean they're Division 5?
Yes,
Like
but they're not.
it's like Cornerstone technically is Division One
No,
freelance, right?
but no, because El Paso Cathedral is TAPS. They're
Right.
in TAPS.
Cornerstone's TAIAO, I think.
Right. So
What?
they are
So
a
who? Give
TAPS
me another
school.
example. Who is another example of that?
John Paul.
John
Let me
Paul's
see. I'm actually.
different, but John Paul and like the Bay areas and all of that are different. Like they're not in a district or like in a division. They went independent. Like El Paso Cathedral, just because they're in El Paso, doesn't play anyone TAPS Division One, but they're still
Yeah.
TAPS Division One.
I
That's
forget about that.
extremely
That's.
dumb.
But
It's a
that.
wild thing.
Because
Yeah.
like Midland still has to drive super far for their games. Like you know what I'm
But
saying? Like,
A Midland
Not as
drive versus an
far.
El
Yeah.
Paso drive is two way different
dude,
things.
I'm gonna do some math. Hold on.
I'm gonna say it's
El Paso's gotta be like
5 hours to Midland versus nine.
9.
9, yeah.
It's gotta
Anyways,
be.
the other thing is that because 1-3 plays them this year instead of 1-2 that played them last year, and now 1-2 swaps and doesn't get a first round bye. They get in playing 2-6 in round one, which basically means in holistic, Prestonwood will play again El Paso Cathedral, while Liberty will probably play an Antonian St. Mike's Prep of the world round one. That's probably what they'll end up being. Dude, I don't know. You asked me right now, put my money on who's going to be 2-6 in that district. I have no clue. But if you told me 3 weeks ago it was going to be Central Catholic, and now they're probably in the fourth spot. So I don't know. I could not
I
tell you how that's going to end. Yes, Ryan.
I want to apologize. I just looked at a map. I definitely did not realize. I feel like I have a good understanding of like U.S. geography,
Yeah.
Texas geography. You're gonna have to give me a second, dude. El Paso. All right, sorry,
How
sorry,
long? How
Is it
Tolson.
long's the
9?
drive? How long's the drive?
Oh, I didn't even look at that. I just saw that it was like you see half to Midland, and then there's another chunk all the way from Midland to El Paso. So
Yeah.
I just
So
I
it's
kind
basically from here to Midland is the same distance from Midland to El
yeah,
Paso. It's probably
I would
yeah.
say so. Yeah, that's yeah.
Okay. So
9 mile.
here's
9 hours 23 minutes. Thank you, Google.
God
Ah,
Almighty. So
jeez.
so here's what I'll say. Initially, I was going to come on and complain about the El Paso thing again because they didn't have to go to El Paso? Did they have to go to El Paso
Now
last
El
year? Okay.
Paso went to Plano and lost bad,
Okay.
and they're
So
probably
so
they're gonna have to do the same thing again this year.
So here's my thing. At first, I was kind of like, okay, well, El Paso's freelance because they're not going to play. They don't want to play in the Division One because they're going to get killed. So why do they get in the Division One playoffs? It makes more sense considering that hey, they physically cannot play in a division because they're so far away. Let's at least give them a crack at the playoffs, I guess. As a
That's
here you
basically
go,
what it
buddy.
is. Yeah.
But like, God, that's gotta suck to drive to Plano, get beat by 60, and be like, okay, we're going home.
Anyways, moving on to TAPS Division 2. There's only one change, I believe, in the whole thing is that 2-5 switches the place of 3-4 in the first round and playing 4-1. and that looks like it will be TWCA in the first round. So instead of St. Anthony's, who had that spot last year, it's going to be a Grace, a Brentwood, a Grace Prep, and that fourth spot playing TWCA round one, which I think is actually a beneficial change, which is a pretty cool thing. So the question I
It's
have
been
for
a
you, it's beneficial for the Grace, the Brentwoods, and the Grace Preps. They get a chance at playing in playoffs, right? Is it harder for TWCA to doesn't have to now they play a tougher team and not a St. Anthony's round one? I don't know if that's a like I guess it's a penalization. I still think they'll win easily, but like you know what I mean? Like it's harder.
it's certainly a harder game. Does it mean anything? Absolutely not. I
Right.
mean, it's just St. Anthony's is just so bad that Grace Brentwood and Grace Prep aren't great, but they have a pulse.
Yeah.
Are any of those teams going to sneak up on TWCA? Likely not, but it's, I guess, at least it goes from a 1.2% chance to maybe a 2.3% chance of that one of those teams winning.
Right. So, moving on to Division Three, this is probably the most change out of any bracket. The matchups basically stay the same, like 2-3 versus 3-2, etc. Right? They just change where they are in the bracket on different sides in different locations. Right? Uh, that doesn't really change much. The big change though is that 2-1, which is probably going to be Dallas Christian, of course, will be on the right side of the bracket now. Um, with the same side as New Braunfels Christian, which is 3-1. Yes. So DC gets the bye in the first round with 2-1, and then New Braunfels gets the bye in the bottom right part of it in 3-1. And also Lubbock Christian, the other one team probably is on the other bye seed. So all ones get a bye this year. That's cool. I don't think Holy Cross had a bye last year at 3-1, which is cool. Um, so that's a plus. Uh, Makes for some cool matchups this year, right? I think like a Holy Cross Lake Country maybe in the first round, or like a Tyler All Saints Hill Country in the first round, which is kind of cool. Dallas Covenant, maybe Geneva in the first round, something like that. We'll see how it all pans out.
And the potential round two matchup of Lubbock Christian versus Holy Cross will feed
Yes,
families.
yes, that would be a lot of fun. That will be where would they play that? Dallas,
Neutral, Lubbock,
Waco?
and
No,
God,
Waco's too close for Lubbock. Maybe.
San Antonio and
Oh,
Hope.
sorry, too close for San Antonio. I don't know.
Let's
Brownwood,
make
maybe?
Ryan with his Texas geography. Ryan, where your best guess of the midpoint between San Antonio and Lubbock?
Oh my, dude, the answer might be Midland
No.
Okay, you're not
or
Abilene?
like
Abilene.
Odessa, maybe.
Abilene. I'm feeling Abilene. Let me look.
What? Abilene's more.
God, Abilene's close. It's a little closer to Lubbock. We might be
Yeah.
looking. It probably It's going to be San Angelo,
Oh
I
yeah,
think.
San Angelo played one of the rounds last week. Yeah, that's where it's gonna be.
By the way, one
Um,
of the best songs by Marty Robbins ever written, San
sh-
Angelo.
Shout out to Marty Robbins. The only other thing is that Division 3 or District 3-5 gets in instead of 2-5, which got dropped from this year to give one of the teams the bye this year. One of the one seeds the bye. Basically, I don't think it matters. I think it is kind of crazy. I said this earlier that basically I think it's funny that one of the John Paul schools gets in instead of the Sheltons or the McKinneys or like something like that instead. I think that's kind of a crazy thing to choose the 3-5 instead of the 2-5 team. But I mean, I don't think it matters in the end. But I think that's an interesting of like why, you know what I mean? When historically the 3-5 is probably the worst seed out of any of the seeds that gets in.
Yeah, you wonder if that's a coin flip type situation, or maybe like this year's the 3-5, next year's the 2-5. I don't make those decisions,
Yeah.
nor do I want to, nor does it change anything, but semantics.
Last thing I'll talk about is Division 4. They just shrunk it by one round. That's the big change. There's not a first round of TAPS Division 4 anymore. It's the quarterfinals, semifinals, championship now. Uh,
So are
which
they starting a week later?
I'm gonna guess so. I guess everyone just gets a bye of a week, which is kind of cool. I think this means because they're still all playing the championship on the same day, so I think everyone just gets a bye for a week and then the same schedule, which is cool. It makes our graphics look cooler whenever they get released because it makes it look better on the graphic. But I think they make for some fun matchups, and it kind of makes sense. I was looking back at the old bracket of like the scores wise. There wasn't one game in the first round that was even close. last year. And so it makes sense of like you want more competitive games in playoffs, right? So let's just get some actual like good games in depth division 4. So makes sense. I think it's a good change in the end. Sucks that like some teams don't make it, but I think overall it's a good change.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think Ryan put this point a couple weeks ago that ultimately the best team is going to win state most likely. Whatever happens between the start and then is kind of gonna just fall out in the wash. At the end of the day, you want to see the two best teams at state and you want to have your team go as far as respectively as they can. But that said, this adds some layers of nuance in there. Ultimately, not a huge needle mover either way, but it would not be we'd not be doing our job did we not report all of this. It is some interesting things to look at, especially always fun to revisit El Paso Cathedral at this point in the year and wonder why that happens, but also look forward to seeing maybe a potential long shot upset. That said, we are now going to move on from that into the fun part of this week, the highlight of every week, the preview of the 5 games of the week, starting in rainy North Texas on the Smurf turf, Prestonwood at Parish, where Parish is an 18.5 point favorite. Hot off the heels of a decimation of the district favorites, Parish will host the Lions of Prestonwood in the final leg of the District 1 Grand Prix. The Panthers are firing on all cylinders. Freshman quarterback Logan Lucero has made incredible strides even since his first game under center, and the offensive line of Caudill, Lockley, Winsall, Lavelle, and House have elevated their play to a scary level. Whether that's paving lanes for Marcus Hanish, who is now over 1,000 rushing yards on the season, giving Phillips an alley to make plays, or holding long enough to let him and Lucero get the ball to Jalen Pyle and Siler Cook, this is increasingly beginning to look like the most potent offense in the state. But with all that said, it's the defense that has been the X factor in recent weeks. It has received a new shot of life under defensive coordinator Jordan Aparoa, and guys like Benjamin Rich, Jesse Richardson, Connor Corwin, and Hillard Terry are playing with their hair on fire. The philosophy for this Panthers team has always seemed to be just get a couple stops and outgun the other team. This season, it feels much more like we're going to pressure you into making mistakes, and even if the offense falters on a couple drives, which is unlikely, we're going to shut down the opposition regardless. But they have to ensure that this is not a hangover spot following the clip emptying that was last week. Because Prestonwood is still a dangerous threat in Division 1. Senior quarterback Luke Glass has thrown for 18 scores and 1,700 yards, 14 of which have found seniors Junior Niffen and A.J. Morial. Senior William Taylor is leading the charge on the ground with just under 100 yards a game, and even with the departure of a handful of elite talents, the engine remains with the offensive line of Caleb Kozlowski, Adam Bingard, Caden Smith, and Brock Schleff. But the other strength of this Lions team lies in their defensive front. Linebackers Cam and Kaylor Pettijohn are two of the best prospects in TXPS and have accounted for 10.5 tackles for loss between them. Ty Gildia is also a monster, and who can forget the black hole Eddie Brownstein on the defensive line? All that said, this is a matchup between the Prestonwood defensive front and the Parish Hogs. This will likely be the toughest attack they have faced since All Saints, where they struggle to give each quarterback time to get the ball off. Parish was also very adamant that they wished for me to pick against them the rest of the way, and I said I would happily do that for the small sum of $100. However, that payment has not been received, and I'm going to side with the Panthers in this game. I think this is a tricky spot because we saw Prestonwood, I say, get whacked by Liberty as a 14-point game. It felt more like 21 or 28. And then Parish just absolutely emptied the clip on Liberty, again, without Cooper Witten and Lincoln McCamey. Everything's clouded. So there you think if Parish is much better than Liberty and Liberty is much better than Prestonwood, Parish has to be much, much better than Prestonwood. I don't follow that logic at all. You take a look at Prestonwood and you realize the offensive line is great. The defensive line and linebackers are great. Luke Glass is great. Will Taylor is very good. The receivers, Junior Niffen, etc., very good. I won't be surprised if it ends up being like within 14 points. Just how on earth do I pick against Parish after what we saw last week? Walker Lott, I think, I'll be honest. and I'm sure I'm going to eat these words at some point. I think anyone that picks against Parish in the spot is insane. I cannot wait for me to be incredibly wrong and that get clipped. And this is such a 180 from last week. But what are we if not talking clowns? I'm taking Parish in this game. I'm going to make fools out of all of us. Your thoughts on the contest?
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of keep this short and sweet. I'm picking Parrish here. I think it's a pretty simple pick. I just think last week, the lockdown of this defense kind of scares me. For this Parrish defense, and yes, they didn't have Cooper Witten and Lincoln McCamey out there at the receiver position. That of course helped him, but just the limiting of the scale guys for them and making Quinn run for his life. Yes, last week intrigued me. And I love Luke Glass. Luke Glass is a great quarterback. I'm glad he's going to East Texas A&M, but he's not the guy with his legs like Quinn Murphy. You know what I mean? And so if you have to rely and you have to have a game where Luke Glass dominates you for 250 yards on the ground, I just don't see that possible. Can Will Taylor do that? Probably. But I just don't see where the quarterback has to escape the pocket and win them this game. I think it's going to be interesting. This is going to be a tough defense that Parrish has to face. I think maybe the toughest besides All Saints they've had all year, right? I think that's a good example. Yeah.
If Liberty had Coop, that'd be questionable.
Yes.
But
I think this defense for Prestonwood's legit. I think it's going to be a fun battle. Lucero is going to get tested really well as a freshman against this good defense. But I'm going to go to Parrish here. I think Novikov's on a tear right now, and I'm not betting against him.
Ryan Schroeder, do you want to be the one to stick the neck out after Parrish eviscerated us last week, and pick against them, maybe to at least give them some motivation, which I'm sure they would appreciate?
Yeah, no, definitely not going to pick against them. That would be really, really, really dumb, especially because you could even argue that Prestonwood, you could argue Prestonwood's not even a top three team in Division One.
Stop saying all that. We're putting ourselves out there too
Okay,
much.
maybe. Yeah, that was kind of crazy. However, you could argue it though. You genuinely could. Like if
That they're
BL
not a
starts,
top three team.
if BL starts playing better.
Perhaps, but Prestonwood did beat BL. Even I think maybe considering St. Thomas in there could be.
Oh, well, that too. I'm in District 1. But yes,
Oh,
St. Thomas too is, yeah, I mean, of course, people are going to be like, well, what do games not mean anything then if we already beat them? And I'm like, that's true. But it's like, I don't know. I think Bishop Lynch is a lot better than I think anyone's giving them credit for. All that to say, Bishop Lynch is not in this game. And I am a fan of the Pettijohns and other, like, like, Brestwood has dogs, bro. AJ Morial's a dog. They got really good dudes, but. I think the Pettijohn brothers, I don't know if they're twins or brothers. The Pettijohn brothers would literally have to go for 10 sacks and just absolutely stop Lucero. Like they would have to literally deny him in the pocket. Like it would have to be the biggest amount of pressure to win this game. And I just think Lucero and Pyle, and I will give my flowers to Pyle. Pyle is going to have a great game this game. This is going to be the first time I'm actually going to say that. Pyle's going to have a great game. And he's going to have 150 yards plus, and he's going to have 2 touchdowns.
There we go.
do
That.
you have any idea how funny this is going to be whenever
When
Preston just goes out and rolls Parrish and
Yep.
and then
Yep.
then Parrish is pissed at us for picking them.
Yep.
Prestonwood's pissed at us for picking against them. I don't care. I think that is the best possible outcome from that game, just to set the entirety of TXPS on fire. Because then you've got the snake eating itself across Division 1.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. Then Taps turns into the SPC. You can tell at this point we've seen so much over the years we've been doing this. If we're rooting for just absolute chaos, and we're calloused against people getting mad at our picks because we're now wanting the upsets to happen. I don't know at this point. It's late. We're gonna move on to another fantastic game, staying in North Texas. Midland at Fort Worth All Saints, where the Saints are 19.5-point favorites. And so we have arrived. With the 3 other contenders ticked off the list with losses, Midland will claim their prize, which is a 4-hour bus ride east to take a crack at the Saints. All Saints is coming off of a really funky affair where they were dangerously close to falling to the cellar of the district in Trinity Christian Lubbock. Call it bus fatigue, call it not having your starters playing all together for a portion of that one, call it whatever you want. That cannot happen for a team with title aspirations. And TWCA and Regents were probably smelling blood in the water. That said, the game was won, and Midland has to be upset with Trinity for essentially kicking All Saints in the jewels and making everyone in that program livid before they play the Ponies. The playmakers remain the same. Senior quarterback Gavin Beard is wheeling and dealing to wide receiver Hudson Resor, who has solidified himself as one of the top pass catchers in the state with 575 yards and 11 touchdowns to match. You pair him with Hatton French, Jatan Briles, Gabe Starling, and you realize trying to double any one of these guys is signing your own death warrant. And if you sell it to stop the pass, you've got running back Burke Toller to contend with behind what is quite possibly the meanest offensive line in the land behind Drew Edmonds, Hayden Powell Freeman, Barrett Bray, Jax Thomas, and Eric Adcock. You flip to the defensive side and add Ryan Powers back into the mix following an injury. Kingston Byers with 20 tackles for loss, sharing the defensive line with him. Gatlinger Hard as well, and Don Hollis on the back end. And the sheer depth of talent quickly becomes apparent. But Midland cares not for your fancy names and shiny state titles. The Mustangs' sole concern in this one is to drag you into the deep water and drown you. And best believe that is what the front of Brady Young, Coy Hayes, and Isaiah Matthews is going to try to do. Listen to these stats for a moment. Brady Young, 16 tackles for loss. Coy Hayes, 17 tackles for loss. Isaiah Matthews, 22 tackles for loss and 10 sacks.
Wow.
I can hem and haw and tell you Midland toughness until I'm blue in the face. I will let those stats speak for themselves. You then consider that Caleb Cruz will be lurking in the back end and that he, Young, Hayes, and Brody Todd will be running behind Utah commit Rowdy Pierce and company. And it becomes clear why this is the game of the year in Division II to this point. I personally am curious to see if Midland's going to try and attack this All Saints front up the middle with that power run onslaught, or if they're going to turn freshman quarterback Jackson Franco loose to Jarrett Stockstill following Stockstill's return. I think Midland is so dangerous because while they can run so effectively, Franco is an absolute gamer and they can easily lull you to sleep and take the top off of your defense. I genuinely believe this is a close game. If there is a team that is built to pick off a title contender, it is Midland. And I'm sorry, Brandon Brunson, I can't bring myself to do it. I want to, but every time I pick against All Saints in these spots, whether it's Parish last year, Prestonwood last year, Parish this year, Prestonwood this year, I get burned. As concerning as last week was, as I just mentioned, this is the team that has swept two of the three best teams in Division One in consecutive years. This is tough. I feel like the ball nowhere pick is to take Midland in this game just because All Saints is the more obvious choice. People, you see a 19.5 point spread. I think that's complete bunk. I think Midland can make this dirty enough that it's a 2-score game. You realize again the story is always going to be Midland's tough because they're out in West Texas. They pump oil out there. They're blue collar, redneck, yada yada yada. People don't realize, therefore, how good Jarrett Stockstill is, how good Caleb Cruz is, how good Jackson Franco is. The skill guys are also really, really good. I just think that All Saints is still far and away the best team in Division II. And I think especially because of what happened last week, they're not going to come out and get caught sleeping. If they do, massive red flag and Regents might turn to the favorites in the division. Walker Lott, that is about as comprehensive an overview as I can give on this game. The pick is going to be All Saints for most people. From your perspective, your thoughts on the biggest game in the division up to this point.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting case. I am so intrigued about this one because I do think this is the best game in Division Two this year. I think it's gonna be a close one. You just can't like Midland is going to battle their way and hit you in the mouth and hit you in the mouth again and again and again. The thing about it is that All Saints knows that battle. They're gonna hit you right back, right? This is gonna be a slugfest in every sense of the word. I want to shout out to a couple guys for All Saints these past couple weeks have really shown out. I think Jaden Briles, the underclassman who's been kind of their sneaky receiver to really shine this year, picking up a couple offers. Another 28 that I'm really excited to see how he does is Jet Thomas. We talked about him in the preseason. This 6'1", 28 linebacker that's kind of stayed into now. He is now the kind of the starter in that middle of that defense now, which is really cool to see. We've talked about the main linebackers for All Saints being just absolute dudes, and he's the next one up, and he's had a great year so far. And I think the last one, of course, is Carson Campbell, the 2029 lineman, who's picked up Tech, Arizona State, Baylor, North Texas, Colorado, right? He's been the guy who's kind of been on the news recently for kind of starting on this offensive line for All Saints and kind of being with another just stacked unit in uh, this offensive line for All Saints, right? Dude, I don't know, man. The trenches are gonna be so much fun to watch, man. You could watch just the trenches battle and that would be the best night of your life, right? Because Isaiah Matthews versus this talented offensive line is just going to be popcorn movie, just everything you want to watch, right? And that's going to be the best. That's going to be the game, right? Their defense is legit, and every defensive line, every offensive line the Midlands come against is they've always won that battle, right? This is the game where I don't know if they can win it, and I don't think they do. I think this offensive line for All Saints with also of course, guys like Bork Toller behind him and all of these guys, Hayden Powell Freeman, Barrett Bray, Jax Thomas, Drew Edmonds. These guys are legit, man. And I think they show out in this one. I just can't bet a team who beat Parish. I can't bet a team who beat or was beating Prestonwood a half. I just can't do that, man. And I wish I could. And Midland's probably going to make me eat my words, but I just can't do that. I just can't. So give me All Saints. Give me the Saints. I have to rep the 817 once again.
I think that's fair. Ryan Schroeder, this is just such an odd spot because it's not that we don't think Midland's capable of beating All Saints. It's that everything All Saints has shown us over the last 2 seasons, where they have not lost this year or last year. Basically, any team they play in the state at this point, we can't pick against them. That's the spot I'm at personally. You still have to give a pick on this game. Both teams are fantastic, but we're in an odd spot with how dominant All Saints has been.
You just said it honestly a second ago. It's like they're I remember when you were going through it, like they're the best team in Division Two by far. Well, there's really an argument that they're the best team in all of private school football.
Yeah.
And with the wins over Prestonwood, with the win over Parish, or halftime win over Prestonwood, but the win over Parish is massive. They've picked up other games throughout the year that I've been extremely impressed by. The only game that is the red flag is that TCS Lubbock game, obviously. Um, but here's the thing though, is like they're still going to hold All Saints to a lower amount of points, I would think. We know Midland's defense is elite. The problem is I just don't know how many you're going to hold them to, and then you have to go then score that many more than them. Like that sounds that's the most like basic take of all time. But like when you break it down, Midland has a great defense. All Saints has a great offense and defense. However, like in a nutshell, like with how good All Saints defense is, they would literally have to score on All Saints defense and then somehow stop the offense of All Saints. This is the most base take of all time. I'm just trying to explain the fact that like All Saints is good in both aspects. The reason Midland's beating teams is because how elite their defense is, and then they just score more points. Forest Christian game's a good example of that. Bishop Lynch is a good example of that. Even the Bushland game is probably a good example of that, even though I don't really know that much. The Cornerstone is a great example of that. They only scored 17 points, but they stopped the Cornerstone offense to 14 points. Like, they win games because they have an elite defense, and they barely get over the hump on the offensive side to beat these teams. With all that being said, give me All Saints here. I think All Saints defense stops anything that the Midland offense is going to bring. And even though Midland's defense is so elite and could stop the All Saints offense, it's just going to get to a point where All Saints is still going to find the end zone, and they'll probably win by, I'd say, 2 scores here as well. It's just like it's the most basic of all time. Obviously, a team stops them, then obviously the other team's going to win. Like, yeah, of course, but you have to understand just like you have to. Midland defense is elite. All Saints is good all around. That's the gist of what I'm trying to say.
I agree with that. I'm really curious to see, especially in 2 consecutive weeks of scoring 56 on SCS, which no disrespect to FCS. I mean, you don't know how much that's worth with their defense. Putting 31 on Fort Worth Christian's impressive with guys like Tucker Ashford, but then you realize that that same Fort Worth Christian team gave up 52 points to TVS. So
Right.
I think you have a point with not knowing where their offense is at necessarily. It's good, but like you said, it's just basically scoring enough that the defense basically can give up a few and be fine. I
Yeah.
think, again, the one time I watched Midland this year live was against Lynch. The offense looked really dang good. Like I said,
Mhm.
with Brody Todd, with Coy Hayes, with Brady Young running the ball, Caleb Cruz adding him into the mix. It's adding some lightning in with that thunder. I think that, like I said, I mentioned this in my portion. I think with how good their defense is, especially not even mentioning Jackson Franco, it's deceptive. It kind of cloaks how potent this offense can be. I think they can score with the best of them in D2, and they're going to be dadgum tested on that on not Friday, on Thursday. The day you see this, probably it's already happened whenever you see this, but
I will say the one thing about that though is that I think because of the firepower they have on offense for All Saints, the reason they've won championships the past couple years is, or last year, was their defense. Like that
exactly.
defense was almost the probably the best unit in the state last year for everything they had, and you know,
You can argue it's their best unit again this year with Ryan
yeah,
Powers, with Gatlinger Hard, with Kingston Byer. I mean,
right.
that's just the front. That's not even the back end and the safeties with Don Hollis and all that. It's a wealth of riches, and we
Yeah.
could literally pick apart this game for the next 2.5 hours. All you need to know is the three of us are on the side of the All Saints. That scares me a little bit because I think Midland can make the game messy, but we'll see. And by God, you will hear about it if they win, as will we. All that being said, we're going to move on and staying in DFW for the third consecutive game. We got Dallas Covenant at Dallas Christian, where the Chargers are 38.5 point favorites. Friday night in Mesquite, we will see DC take on their first team with a pulse since Pittsburgh 4 weeks ago. It is the first time we've spoken of Dallas Christian in quite a while on the program, but the Chargers are still firmly in the title race for TAPS Division 3. Interesting times in Mesquite as it appears that a three-quarterback system is still being employed between junior Luke Savard, senior River Kirkhoff, and junior Cooper Johnson. Savard leads the trio with 736 yards and 6 touchdowns as the group has combined for 1,300 passing yards and 11 scores, with sophomore Dylan Belt emerging as the leading wideout with 560 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns. That cat will be one to watch. However, this is Dallas Christian that we're talking about, and their identity was, is, and always will be grinding you down on the ground. And that starts this year with senior Dylan Stanley. 900 yards, 14 touchdowns, averaging 130 yards per game. You put him behind a very solid offensive line, and that dude is going to come close to 2,000 before the season ends. And that's without even mentioning the defense that is allowing less than 14 points per game, led by sophomore standout Hudson Dietz with 50 tackles and 19 TFLs, with linebackers Jack Lemon and Jackson Barr enforcing their will as well. But Covenant is not Shelton or Bishop Gorman. The Knights bring playmakers to the table, namely junior defensive lineman Connor Evans, who at 6'2", 275 is one of the top talents in the division. You added Mac Metzger on the defensive line, Davis Carlin at linebacker at 6'1", 210, Duke Black at wideout, who's one of my favorite prospects in the division. And the question will be, will sophomore Ryan Hillner or freshman Thomas Lashley in at quarterback following an injury to Hillner several weeks ago? Covenant obviously hasn't had the season that they have hoped for, but will likely still be playoff contenders in Division 3. I'm very curious in this one to see where Dallas Christian is actually at a team that is not the bottom of the barrel in the division. The pick is still Dallas Christian, and quite frankly, I think this is a lopsided affair. But I'm keeping an eye on it to see where DC really lies this season as we inch closer to ring season. Walker Lott, this is interesting from a game of the week perspective because we set this up a while back, especially whenever I watched Covenant versus First Baptist, and we thought Covenant with Ryan Hillner emerging, with Connor Evans and Mac Metzger, who are both fantastic, with Duke Black, with Davis Carlin, all the guys that I've mentioned. They looked like they had taken a significant step forward. We thought DC sans Luke Carney had taken a half step back. Ultimately, DC still performed well. Covenant has wavered here a little bit. I still think this is going to be their toughest test. Actually, All Saints might be now. We'll get to that later. As of now, it's certainly their toughest test to date in the division. And quite frankly, it's the first team they've played that shows signs of life. I'm interested in this game to see if Dallas Christian comes out, cracks them, moves on, or if maybe we haven't seen DC tested to this point, and maybe this could be some funky 14-point game at halftime. I'm going to come out and say I don't think that's the case, especially for DC's relatively close game against Pittsburgh earlier in the season and their decent outing against Cornerstone. I think this is closer to a DC team of old than a Covenant team that's close to DC, if that makes any sense. That's my rambling. The picks DC. Your thoughts, comments, insights, or general frustration and anger from this game?
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. This is DC. DC by a lot. DC by 28. I don't think this is close. Like this is going to be not a great game for Dallas Covenant, and the King stays on the throne.
Ryan Schroeder.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat. I mean, Dallas Christian's going to win this game 30, whatever you think it is. I mean, I am impressed by certain guys. Obviously, Stanley and others as well. Like DC is an extremely talented team. Overall, though, besides the Cornerstone game, and I would have wished to see the SCS game go be an entire game as well. And I get that you have to book, public school teams here and there. Like with how bad your district is and stuff, I just wish that I would have seen other games at a DC. Like I don't like booking Atlas Homeschool. I don't like booking Dallas HSAA. Like you're going to beat the crap out of some of these teams. I almost, and this is the sentiment y'all had last week is like, well, you don't want to play a bunch of good teams in a row and destroy your dudes and all of them get hurt. Like I understand that. Like, and that's a non-football person not understanding that for sure. Because basketball wise, we'll just book every good team in the country at that point. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just kind of how it works. But I get that football wise, you don't want to play 10 teams that are bigger than you. So all that being said, I just like the fact that they now have what 4 games this year where they've only let up 7 or less points, not counting the SCS game, or whatever. Oh, even though they let up 14 in that game, sorry. Um, I don't know. I'm just a little frustrated in the fact that you play such a bad district. I would have liked to see a couple other big dogs in the non-district schedule.
Yeah, I mean, they're also in a weird spot, especially as a very good lower division TAP school, where if you go and you try to schedule, especially certain public schools, they're like, what's the incentive to play you?
Right.
Because if we win, we were supposed to beat the small private school. If we lose, we got humiliated by the small private school. That's something I always try and keep in mind there. But also, we forget as recently as 2022, their non-district slate was as follows. It was Bishop Dunn when Dunn was still pretty good, Fort Bend Christian on their state championship year, Dallas First Baptist, Bishop Lynch, Nolan Catholic, Fort Worth Christian. I mean, again, I'm not going to get nitpicky with the schedule because I know how much coaches agonize over scheduling in the offseason and then eventually, like, 4 of the teams you have slotted switched and can't play anymore. All that being said, it's going to shake out the way that it shakes out, but it'll be interesting to see. But as for this pick, it's going to be Dallas Christian, and it should be interesting, perhaps. Moving forward, we're going to yet again for our 4th consecutive game stay in the northern region of things, but flip down to the Southwest Preparatory Conference, the specific 3A division, where Oakridge is going to play Country Day in a preview of the SPC 3A title. The Falcons of Country Day are 11.5-point favorites. Shout out also to Jack Klosek, who's supposed to be on this episode this evening, helping us break it down. He got busy as life has its way of doing, but he helped me significantly with both the scripts for this game and the Kinkaid game, so we'll be trading off words there. That being said, Oakridge and Country Day are having major turnaround years for both programs. Oakridge is 8-0 and a perfect 4-0 in non-conference, 4-0 in the SBC, including besting 6A El Paso Coronado and TVS. Coach Flowers, as Walker can explain, has done a number on the place and really, really turned it around. They have dominant conference wins over St. Andrews, Cistercian, and Houston Christian, and a really, really fun game over TVS in the Battle of Bryant Irvin, where Ryan and I were on site to witness. Both teams have already clinched their spot in the SPC 3A title game, so this game will determine who plays in the home team if my logic is correct. Flipping to the other side, Country Day is 6-1. Their only loss is to John Cooper, who blew them out. They smacked around 4A St. Mark's with also a very gutsy win over Trinity Valley. They played Houston Christian a little bit close, but they also blew out Cistercian and Green Hill. This is going to be a very fun game with 2 programs that have taken major steps forward in the division. Strong coaching, both with Coach Flowers and Coach Burns. It's going to be incredibly interesting. Both teams are strong, but as you see, Oakridge has just continued to roll throughout the season, and it seems that our prediction on them was good in the preseason. Oakridge went just 3-3 last year. They finished 4th in the conference. As of now, Cole Worthington is just absolutely tearing it up with 1,300 yards and 21 touchdowns. I personally think that the defense is going to be the story here. Oakridge is allowing 17 points per game. Country Day is allowing 20. Country Day appears to have played slightly better talent in Colleyville Covenant and St. Mark's and John Cooper. I just it is so hard for me to bet against Cole Worthington, Luke Dearman, Kingston Parks, etc. And Walker, you've seen Oakridge, and I'll let you speak to it in a second. I obviously forget that I'm wearing the Oakridge hat as well. I've got to get a shout out to Oakridge head of school Matt Berge for sending this over. So I feel like a bit of a fool not taking Oakridge in the spot. I it's difficult, and I'm stalling because I don't even know if I fully made my pick yet. I have. It's Oakridge. I just think Country Day is really sneaky good with guys like Cooper Ball, with Fox Burton, with Kanan Factor, who I haven't even mentioned yet, with Major Factor, with William Blumenthal, a bunch of guys that kind of get pushed under the top of the prospects in the SBC 3A. I just I'm gonna roll with Oakridge. I've decided fully. I do think that their defense might just get enough stops to win this game. Ultimately, I think this is a true coin flip. Walker Lott, I've seen Country Day live. You've seen Oakridge live. I took the blind faith in the team I haven't seen. What direction are you swinging?
Yeah, this is gonna be an interesting one. I think in the trenches is where it's gonna matter. Yeah, guys like Easton Jefferson and Yadi Warren and Caden Thomas on the defensive line are gonna be key pieces for Oak Ridge in this one. I think the advantage in the skill positions has to go to Oak Ridge. They just have too many Hudson Hayes, Kingston Parks, etc. Right? They just have so many weapons. I think major factor will be a major factor in this one. Haha. But like truly, like
Mm.
he's gonna be legit in this one. I really think so. Um, so I think it's gonna come down to the trenches, but I've ridden with Oak Ridge all year, and I'm gonna side with them again. I think they're just too talented. They get it done when it matters, and I think they stay undefeated. And I think this is a close one. Like we saw with TVS, I think it's a close one. I think it's a one-score game. But I think just Oak Ridge knows how to win, and they've done it all year. So I think I'm gonna go with them again.
Yeah, I think if anything's been proven this year, it's that triangle of Oak Ridge, Country Day, and TVS are all very close together. And I think any team beats any on any given night. Sadly, TVS has already been knocked out with two narrow losses to these teams, but they will face off for the first of two games, Ryan Schroeder, and ultimately outside of home field advantage, this game doesn't really mean a whole lot. Maybe they should send, I think they should send the JV out there for both these teams just to avoid anyone getting hurt. What do you say?
Oh my gosh, that would be insane. No, I really liked when we saw, Factor and Fox Burton and all of them and stuff. Like, I really think they're incredible athletes. Obviously, I have a really, you know, I've said this a couple times, the Cooper Paul versus the Hayes Casey, that whole debacle with who should actually be the one throwing the rock and stuff. Um, I have a take that I thought what we saw of Hayes Casey was better than what we saw of Cooper Paul. However, they've won a lot of games. Cooper Paul, the quarterback position, they're definitely just still splitting time ever since Cooper Paul came back from injury. With all that being said, I haven't seen Oak Ridge. I know Cole Worthington is the truth. Um, I you average 100 yards rushing per game. I'm definitely gonna obviously want to side with you because it's just there's a few other teams in the state that have the exact same thing where they have a rusher that's almost over 100 yards per game, and that's how they win games. AKA SCS, CTCS, Kinkaid, whatever else you want to say. There are schools around the country that rely on a 100-yard per game back. Um, However, I really like who Fourth Country Day has scheduled. I don't like the fact. I mean, I just went on a whole rant about DC. Oak Ridge obviously is 8-0. You've beaten everybody in front of you. But I do like that Country Day went out and challenged themselves. The one dude we saw that got hurt too, I can't remember his name. For Fourth Country Day, we saw a guy got hurt in one of those games, the TVS game that we went to. Um, I don't remember his name, Wes, but basically, I obviously know with the whole argument we just talked about that playing bigger teams creates more injuries and stuff, right? So you're probably looking at a more healthier Oak Ridge team. That's my full assumption here. Um, However, all that being said, I like the fact that Country Day is booked other teams. I like the fact that they're still 6-1 with their only loss being to one of the best teams in 4A and John Cooper. With all that being said, I think Worthington's a dog, but give me Fourth Country Day by about a field goal.
We'll see. I think that's a good pick. Again, I really towards the end of my script wanted to get into picking Country Day just because I've seen them. However, I picked against Oakridge already and lost, and a common theme for me is whenever that happens, I try to avoid getting burned by the same pot twice. So
Yeah.
we're gonna go with I like also that we're diversified here, so there's no haha funny screenshots that float around Twitter, although there will probably be many of those excluding this game. All that being said is two on the side of Oakridge, one on the side of Country Day as we transition into the final game that we will preview on the evening. And one of, if not the biggest ones, when John Cooper travels to Kinkaid, where the Falcons are 21.5 point favorites. After an 0-2 start, Kinkaid has been absolutely rolling with 6 straight wins. They dominated St. Thomas and Second Baptist. They smacked around the Episcopal School of Dallas and St. Mark's, and also a very, very fun win over Episcopal just last week. Kinkaid played Gunner and Regents very closely, losing to Gunner by 5 and Regents on a walk-off field goal in the second week of the season. Surprise, surprise, Wayne Shanks is the truth. The kid had 3 touchdowns against Episcopal. He is very likely going to be the SBC Player of the Year. As we know, one of the most highly recruited prospects in the land for good reasons. He's going to give you at least 150 yards and a couple touchdowns on any given night. But there are guys that play football with him as well. Ross Wynn spins the ball incredibly well. Miles Camrata, Holden Jones, Donnelly, and Drake Olson are all very dangerous as receivers. The defense with Morgan Tannery, Thomas Smith, Tanner Naveen, Odell Wynn, Henry McFall, Jordan Young, all those guys could also go both ways. And obviously, with Larned leading the team, who we've spoken at length about, it's always rock solid. The offensive line is definitely weaker for Kinkaid than it is for Cooper, as we've seen, but the Kinkaid defense held Regents to 24, Episcopal to 24, St. Thomas to 6, Second Baptist to 10, etc. They will come to play. A very, very strong non-conference slate, and you pair that with the fact that Larned knows how to win football games. On the other hand, you have John Cooper. They have a definite advantage on the offensive line. Colson Collins is likely the superior quarterback at this point in his career. Jacoby Dixon is going to be a big question mark in this game. We know he's played a little bit sparingly. He's dealt with injuries. We know when he's healthy, he's one of the best running backs, not in SPC, not in Texas private school football, in Texas high school football, full stop. The question is, how ready is he to go? Because you're looking down crunch time. You think he's been on a pitch count. And all of a sudden, you're looking at a game where it's like, okay, well, if we're holding out for anything, it's this game. So likely, if he's ready to go, he's going to go full tilt here. You had Colton Roden, the twins on the offensive line, Jake Sneed, Esquivel, and others, and there is no doubt they are one of the most talented teams in all Texas private school football. A fantastic turnaround spot. Objectively, Cooper has played a relatively weak schedule. They played a poor Colorado team, Concordia Lutheran, who I actually, this, again, a lot of these are Jack's words. I don't think Concordia Lutheran is that poor. Lutheran
No.
South, poor. Fourth Country Day, relative to Cooper, poor, even if they're one of the best teams in 3A. They haven't played a super high quality conference opponent, and they played a little bit closely with St. Mark's and Kinkaid, smack St. Mark's. Yet again, you're seeing a little bit of Kinkaid bias flow through in this, not from me, from Jack for 6 words. They also gave up 30 plus to Episcopal, where Kinkaid gave up 7 on the road. Now, granted, that is a fact. Jack's going to say here that Kinkaid's got the winning pedigree. Coach DeHaven is a fantastic coach. The game is at Kinkaid, and this will likely be the biggest game in program history for Cooper. I don't think so.
That's
actually,
wrong.
because
They've won 2
played in
titles.
Again, I was going to get to that. They played in 2 straight state titles. This is the biggest SPC 4A game in the history of John Cooper.
Fair enough.
I will say that. That being said, Kinkaid has beaten more talented teams. They played a more competitive schedule. And here's the thing, and here's where I'll cut off and I'll say my words for the most part. I think from a talent standpoint, the game is almost dead even, and Cooper might have a slight advantage there. I've said this in the weeks leading up to this. I've said this in the past few years. I don't bet against Kinkaid in these spots. I don't. I think Coach Larned always finds a way, if the talent level is equal or even slightly above, to win these games. I think Coach DeHaven is a fantastic coach, and he has shown the ability to win in big spots and in championship spots. I just think that this is going to be a spot where I try and get cute and try and pick John Cooper, and Kinkaid comes out and wins this game 20-17. I mean, I can see it as clear as day. I really do think that Colson Collins, that Colton Roden, that it's the Twins on the offensive line start with an N. Is it Newberger?
Newman.
Newman, the Newman twins. I think they're great. I just think that Cooper is a more established. I'm sorry, that Kincaid's a more established team. I'm going to go with the known factor and not reach into the unknown and pick Cooper yet. Granted, this could be a preview of things to come. So, all that being said, I might just use this as a testing ground and then flip my pick in the SBC title game. Walker Lott, I'm going to rock with Kincaid in the spot. You have seen John Cooper, at least. Have you seen both of these teams live?
Yep.
You have. So you probably have a better perspective on this contest than I do. Which direction are we siding with?
Yeah, this is I say it every week, but this is gonna be an absolute fun one. I'm very excited for this one. I've been looking forward to this all season. Um, I mean, two talented teams, both have weapons on both sides of the ball. Um, Defensively, they're just for Kincaid, they're just such a sound unit, right? It sometimes just doesn't make sense against the teams they play, and they just flat out win them. They just dominate their teams they play, and that's a testament to the coaching staff, to Larnett, and ultimately the players. Man, they buy in, and they get Larnett gets everything out of these players as much as they like. In their 4 years, they give everything to this program, and it's a testament to the culture over there at Kincaid. It's legit. On the flip side, though, DeHaven's a winning coach, right? From his days at St. Pius to now, he knows how to win ball games. And this is not his first time trying to try for a SBC title. But this ain't the 3A, like I just said a second ago. This ain't the 3A. This is 4A, and it's a whole different ball game. And this is the game to kind of show, okay, we're finally here. They have the talent to do it. Jake Sneed, Eric Sipko's probably the best receiver in the SBC this year. Um, Joe Norman, the freshman, is just electric. It's like Dean Calhoun reincarnated, but I think better. Like Solomon Woods of the defensive line, and you talk about, of course, Jacoby Dixon. But I mean, even if he doesn't play or does play, we'll see how that goes. Colton Roden is the best running back, minus, of course, Wayne Shanks in the SBC this year. I really think so. He's been dominating week in after week, and he's an animal this year. And Colson Collins is probably the most efficient quarterback in the SBC this year. Their offense is absolutely rolling. The defense, multiple interceptions a game. I like this defense as well. You probably will see Colton Roden maybe playing both sides of the ball this week. It's going to be a lot of fun down there in Kincaid. For my pick, I was reading that and I was just kind of, Jack with this Kincaid bias, and it was rubbing me the wrong way. And I think it's a new age. I think it's a new age in SPC 4A. I'm picking Cooper. I think this is the time where the Dragons get it done and show that all this talent, all this hype is finally they're about it, right? So this is the first of two games, I think, between these two teams this year. And I think Cooper gets it done here. This is a statement win. It's a big win. They have the talent. They have the coaching. I think they get it done. Is it going to be a massive blowout? No. This is going to be like a field goal game. But I think the edge goes to Cooper in this one.
Very interesting. Ryan Schroeder, Kincaid showed some signs of life, or humanity, I should say, last week, only beating Episcopal by 4. Now, granted, it's also a very solid Episcopal team, but it shows they're not head and shoulders above every single team in this division. If there is a team outside of Episcopal that can give Kincaid a good run or even beat them, it's definitely John Cooper. Your thoughts between a great game and what might be the first of two between two of the top teams in 4A?
Yeah, I mean, it's so exciting, dude. We get two games back to back that are title previews in the SBC. We already know one's for sure, and this one's, definitely looks pretty promising with the Kincaid win over EHS already. With all that being said, I think this is the words they all use and stuff. Like on paper, like John Cooper has better tools. They have better, like overall, well-rounded Colson Collins to the defensive side of the ball with Horick and everyone. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like they are a well-rounded, like high-level SPC 4A team We've only seen Jacoby Dixon rush the ball 8 times this year in total. He's had 8 rushes in the 2 games that he's played in. However, that is 8 yards per carry. I will tell you that I just don't know Jacoby Dixon other than what we've seen him at being a 4-star level player, right? 4-star level player. Um, if he plays, yeah, the game could be flipped on his head because now they have a Wayne Shanks on their side of the ball as well. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the funny part about it. But they also have a bunch of dogs as well. Like yeah, like Walker said, accurate wise, Colson Collins could be pretty much the best quarterback in SBC. Uh all that being said, the formula, and I think I've said this to people, I said this to teams that played Cole Allen back in the day. How do you beat how do you beat Kinkaid with Wayne Shanks? You stop the main person that is their entire offense. You actually do what Brazos Christian did. You do what Brazos Christian did. You lock down the best player and their scorer and everything. Kinkaid won the EHS game because Wayne Shanks had 250 yards, right? If you can somehow, some way slighten that down to being only 100 yards in a game, John Cooper could win this game by a touchdown, 2 touchdowns. It could look like the Brazos Christian game against CTCS. Theoretically, I just told you they have to stop Wayne Shanks, though. I don't think that's going to happen. Wayne Shanks week over week has had more yards in the game previous ever since like September 19th, whatever, when they played Rockport Fulton. All that being said, Wayne Shanks is a dog. They have other dogs. They're very versatile on the defensive side of the ball. I think Kinkaid has championship pedigree. They are SBC 4A in recent memory. I don't think John Cooper is currently at the level of Kinkaid. However, I could be so wrong, and I could flip my pick in about 2 weeks here. All that being said, give me Wayne Shanks. Give me Kinkaid. Please, please, please do not lock Wayne Shanks up. I am begging you, John Cooper. I'm begging you. Kinkaid in this game. Give it to me by, gosh, a touchdown, a field goal. I don't know.
I think regardless of the outcome, it's going to be a 3 to 7 point game. I really do think it's that close. And like I said, just in these situations where I've got a team that's been there more, especially when it's Kinkaid. I'm going to take Kinkaid in the spot. I'm boring. I'm a dinosaur. I am reluctant to accept change, but it might be well on our doorstep, whether we like it or not.
Moving on to the last game of the slate, and yes, I am by myself for this one. It is what it is. Houston St. Thomas at Concordia Lutheran. St. Thomas, according to Massey ratings, is a 22.5 point favorite. In a district that is just eating each other alive, two schools have raised above that and remain of the top two favorites in this district. Concordia Lutheran has shined this year, going 6-1 and absolutely throwing a grenade in our TAPS Division 1 District 2 preseason rankings. Their only blemish on the year being a 53-34 loss to SPC Power John Cooper in week 2. But since then, they have won 5 straight big wins over St. Pius, Central Catholic, and others in district. This is a large part due to junior do-it-all sensation Jackson Coleman, one of the best athletes in all of TXPS, has a great start to the year with 8 touchdowns on offense, 5 interceptions on defense, and 3 return touchdowns on special teams. A pure difference maker in every sense of the phrase. Also, one of the only TXPS athletes to ever make it on the SportsCenter top 10. Shout out to my clip of his one-handed interception making it. You combine that with the tough physical and athletic runner, senior Malik Liberty in the backfield, who is one of the top backs in TAPS Division 1, who has had a great start of the year. And that has happened because of offensive lineman Brode Clark and William Canovis and company blocking for him up front. Ryan Nejic has stepped into the quarterback role this season and hasn't looked back. Nejic is a true surgeon on the field and can also beat you with his legs as well. Swiss Army knife Rome Stanford has been a great addition to this Crusader squad this year and is one of the top DBs in all of TXPS and a mismatch on the offensive side of the receiver. Truly one of our favorites since watching him as a freshman. The 6'3 senior just flat out makes plays and you don't want to throw his way on the defensive side as well. Then Cody Kucher, Carson Clark, and the monster Nathan Muwaka rounded a talented group of seniors that have been gotten the Crusaders to 6-1 this point and running in second in that district. This Concordia offense averages 40 points a game, and more notably, only allowing 14.7 points a game on defense. But that is not the defense that has been the standout in this matchup. That belongs to the Eagles of St. Thomas. allowing only 11.1 points a game so far, and that includes to teams such as St. John's, Kinkaid, Lake Creek, who's a big UIL school, St. Pius, Central Catholic, and Antonian Prep. This Coach Davis-led defense is dominating the South of Texas at a monster level. And the defense starts and ends with Duke commit Obina Ume. Since seeing him on the sidelines as a freshman, Ume has turned into one of the top edge rushers, not just in TXPS, but the entire state. 48 tackles, 14 TFLs, 8 quarterback hurries, a forced fumble, and 6.5 sacks through 8 weeks? Unbelievable. He is doing whatever he wants at the line of scrimmage this year, and it's so much fun to watch on tape. You combine that with 6'3 Rylan Kempson on the other side and Kyron McQueen in the middle, and standouts Liam McCarthy and Vontrell Benton at the linebacker spots. They make up one of the top front sevens in the state. You had then Cohen Alexander and Logan DeBose at the corner spots. We shout out a lot of schools in the north and even Kinkaid and Houston for their standout defense. But Davis has this defense firing on all cylinders, shutting down opposing offenses. Coach Raymond Davis has established a tough, gritty, physical defense since his time as the DC there at St. Thomas many years ago. But now that has translated into the offense as well, with the primary focus in the run game led by coaches Green and Holland. This starts with the two-back tandem of junior Miles Stewart and senior Javon Waldron, who have 6 and 7 touchdowns on the ground, respectively, plus Waldron having 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in the receiving game as well. The gunslinger leading the way is OG surgeon in the junior Pierce Jacobson, who came in and became the starter middle of the season last year and got St. Thomas to the semifinals in TAPS Division 1. Now, coming off a 7-touchdown performance against Antonia, the junior will look to all-state receiver Nate Tidwell, who has 4 touchdowns of the year, senior J. Mark Hentel, and sophomore Ben Creech to throw the ball to. In the end, it will come down to can this offense led by offensive coordinator Eric Allen from Concordia find the key to unlock the St. Thomas defense? And can Coleman make the big plays to keep them in this game while Stanford and Milwaukee in this defense locks down Jacobson, Stewart, and company? I just don't think they can, and Wes and Ryan agree with me in saying that St. Thomas is going to win this game. This St. Thomas defense is flat out disgusting every sense of the word. Obina Ume is playing like a true TAPS MVP here in the south of Texas. And just guys like Rylan Kempson, McQueen, McCarthy, DeBose. This defense is loaded and loaded with talent. I didn't even mention Jacob Quinlan, who had 2 interceptions on the year. This defense is loaded with talent, and the run game for the St. Thomas team has been just so incredibly impressive in this switch kind of to a run-heavy offense. It's been a lot of fun to watch. St. Thomas, I don't think is going to lose here. Jackson Coleman's going to make it so interesting in this one. He's a true superstar and makes the big plays and keeps them in games. You can't kick to him on defense and or on punt or kick return. He's going to make plays. If Nija can get the ball to him and Malik Liberty can run a little bit, it's going to get a little bit interesting. But I just think St. Thomas pulls away in the end to keep their crown and being one of the top teams in TAPS Division 1 this year. I don't think this is a bad season at all, and I don't think it's going to be a huge loss for Concordia in this one. I think Concordia is still going to stay that number 2 spot in that district. I just don't think. I think there's a St. Thomas level and then the rest of TAPS Division 1 District 2 this year. So,
all that being said, that actually is the final game that we have to cover on the week. 5 fantastic games. That is a microcosm of the electric week that we have coming up in Texas private school football. Yes.
Did you say where you're all going to be on site for?
Oh, yes. I will be. Well, actually, I already am at Fort Worth All Saints versus Midland by the time you're watching this game.
That's good.
Yeah, and I will be at Kinkaid John Cooper, which will be a lot of fun.
Cool.
Absolutely. No, it's going to be electric. Again, looking at the SBC, we've got 2 games that might be previews of title matches. We've got leg 3 of the Division 1 Grand Prix. We've got Midland and All Saints basically pointing machine guns at each other. It's incredibly fun. We are going to bring all the coverage. As always, we're going to have Creighton Seeger and Whitney Legger at Southwest Christian versus
Fort Worth
versus Fort Worth Christian. We're going to have Brock Bergen at Liberty Christian versus Bishop
Nolan Catholic.
Nolan Catholic. There we go. There's so many teams everywhere.
So many teams.
And then Jaden Villarreal will be on site with me at All Saints to cover Midland. Again, the tentacles extend out through all of Texas, and we therefore get you coverage of all these fantastic matchups. All that being said, before I yap any longer, as always, I have been 1/3 of your hosting crew, Wes Tolleson. Walker Lott and Ryan Schroeder have fantastically been themselves. We will see you in the Week 9 recap on Monday. See you later.